Welcome. So today I have Carlos Lavoy with me. Thank you for being with me today, Carlos.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So Carlos is a managing director in the equity research department of a major global bank. For his work, he produces global research reports that are
Mhm.
sold to institutional clients who use his research to determine what company stocks to buy or sell. He studies companies based in Latin America, the US, Canada, Europe, UK, and Africa and China. And he's won awards for his research. Carlos is special to us because he's one of the original participants in Dr. Carol Coulthard's study. He's agreed to meet with me today to share the impact of knowing the research process, what impact that has had on his life. We created the guided inquiry design from the results of a study that you were in and the studies that Carol Coulthard did after that. You know, bottom line, we created guided inquiry because we believe the lessons learned are game changers for student learning. And the information environment today, we know is even more important that students learn how to research, what research is, and the process that they go through. I think it has the power to help all students reach their own human potential. And I think you agree with me, and that's why you're here with us today. So you have years of time to reflect on this impact, and in perfect hindsight, you've told us before that it has impacted you as a student, in your career, and your life as a parent. So let's start with you as a student. How did it impact you in your life as a student?
This was probably the most important experience I had in high school as a student, right? I was a very average student, a good student, but not very outstanding. And I wasn't particularly confident in any of those fields of study, whether it was English, history, math, science. It was all very average. I think that um, the time that Carol spent helping me understand the research process, um, getting better at writing in general as a result of it, gave me a tremendous amount of confidence in English. And I wound up taking the more advanced English courses, eventually AP English, which is remarkable, right? For a high school kid who had just arrived from Puerto Rico, into the mainland U.S. In eighth grade, and was a English was a second language.
Wow.
So it really gave me tremendous amounts of confidence. I think as my academic career advanced and I went out to Rutgers, um, I was a double major in Spanish and economics. Um, the the Most of the coursework that I took at Rutgers was really graduate courses in Spanish. And the research process doesn't change with language. It's the same exact issues. So it was tremendously helpful there, as well as in my English coursework. I think I was only about three or four credits short of an English major as well. And given a choice in economics of whether we I wanted to write a research paper or do an exam, I always opted for the paper. I felt that I had full control of a paper. And in fact, I think in my last year and a half at Rutgers, I don't think I took a single exam. I think they were all basically papers.
Wow. Yeah.
Love the idea of digging, of being able to dig, of bringing a shovel to a project and actually finding things that other people maybe couldn't find as easily, or gaining perspective that was different. Um, and and that was very empowering, right? When I was in high school, my other passion was photography. And what I loved about photography and what the research process gave me when you start putting those two things together is that they really are all both about the discipline of gaining a perspective that others can't bring to the table on something that might be rote and common, and using that differentiated perspective that you've gained and sharing it in a way that it becomes valuable to others. And so even in my career today, that's a lot of what I do when I do research of companies or of the beverage industry. I dig for insights that help investors glean a differentiated perspective and fill out a mosaic of what's going on in the industry from an investment standpoint that is different and is valuable. So learning how to use a shovel and dig and gain commercial applications for it was hugely valuable and empowering.
What about that course that you took with Dr. Kulpa? What was it about that made that happen for you?
The research papers were like a lot of other things. They can sap your confidence. They can leave you a little bit lost. It's easy when you don't have confidence and you feel lost in what you're doing to think you're just not good at it and to give up on it, or to let the process overtake you rather than you take control of the process. And I think that learning through that process, oh, this is how I'm supposed to feel now. Oh, this is what I need to do about it now, I think was valuable. Also, the tools for dealing with it were valuable tools. The idea that I needed to talk through my papers. I remember in high school, even having to go to the Rutgers library to get sources and talking my paper through with my dad when he was driving me to the Rutgers library. And then talking it through with the librarians who were helping me there to get the sources that I needed. Then feeling completely overwhelmed and lost by the massive amounts of information that I had just gathered that I didn't know what to do with, and speaking with Carol about it or with my English teacher about it, and maybe with some of my colleagues, and getting out of that situation, out of that wilderness and making sense of it was very empowering too. And then when you realize this is how every paper is supposed to go, this is the way this process works, this is what I need to do now to get to the next step, it becomes very process-like.
Yeah, so recognizing that in yourself and being able to replicate it time and again. And you also saw that that product is worth working for. The digging is worth doing because you come out with something that's really unique. So
It's
that's
so
really,
rewarding.
yeah. To talk a little bit about the role of teachers and librarians listening. And you've told me before about how important it is to just have them listen. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
It's really important for, I think, for librarians to listen to the students when the students are feeling lost, when the students are having a hard time putting it together. But it's not just listening, it's actually pulling it out of them, because I think a lot of kids are afraid to maybe speak up and say, hey, I'm lost. Hey, I'm not dealing well with this issue, or I need help with this, or pinpointing exactly what they're having trouble with. So here it is the teacher's job and the librarian's job to actually be the researcher, to be the one who's asking the probing questions, the right questions, getting to the issues of where the student is in writing these papers so that they can help them.
It's amazing that you went into a field of research too. How did that happen?
I have been an equity research analyst since 1987. That is what I do on Wall Street. I love doing research, and the idea that I could for a living dig for differentiated insights, play to what I felt were my strengths, and do it in a very lucrative industry at the time. When I started working on Wall Street, being a research analyst or being a banker were the pinnacle of banking in terms of income levels, in terms of potential. So it opened up doors for me that I am absolutely certain would never have been opened had I not become proficient in this research process.
Like, how does getting the different perspective, how has that helped your career? That's been really important too, right? Because a lot of people probably do research and don't have that understanding. And so how has that helped you in what you do to like rise to the top?
I work in an industry where there are financial statements available on companies, and all of my competitors have access to the same financial information. Every investor has access to the same financial information. Everyone can run the same analysis on the numbers that are available. But really trying to understand how a company, how an industry is evolving, how a consumer is going to be behaving, how how a company will react to those opportunities in the marketplace requires learning to ask questions, learning to ask the right questions. And if you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. And so much of the digging process and of the research process is about asking questions with an open mind, about being able and willing to change your mind. Don't bring in an agenda. Just ask questions, learn. You have to learn to be quiet when you're getting that information so that you can take it all in. You have to learn to be reflective of what you're getting. And there's a tremendous amount of humility that's required in the process, because if you bring in your preconceived notions, there's a good chance you can be wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely.
But also, if you learn to ask a lot of the right questions, and you learn to dig for insights and to create a differentiated perspective that helps your clients gain a better understanding, a different understanding of the subject matter. Even if you're wrong, you will be forgiven. You live to see another day because you were valuable, because you added perspective, because you helped them think about things differently, because you gave them pieces to the puzzle that maybe they didn't have, and they were some of the missing pieces of the puzzle that they needed to make an investment decision the right way. Right. So the research process and the ability to dig, I think, is critical to being helpful in my field.
I love that. Yeah, critical to being helpful, and you're value added and you're helpful is just that's really powerful. So when you think about, we've talked a little bit about you as a student and your career. What about life or being a parent? How has the process and knowing the process helped with that? Seems a little more abstract, but I think you have some interesting insight.
You know, it's funny. When my kids started coming into high school and started working on research papers, and I saw them struggling with them, I realized, oh, I've been there. Helping them work through their research papers, because I would try to get involved with them on those processes. I realized they're not getting the guidance they need at school for formulating a thesis, for looking for information, for knowing how to deal with the information that's coming in, for getting unstuck. And I couldn't believe that here we are. I don't know, how many years is it since I did that? I'm embarrassed to say 40 years. 40 years later or something. And private high schools that I pay $40,000 a year for can't master the process yet of helping students write a research paper.
That they haven't evolved in their approach.
Yeah. They haven't evolved. let's say I have a daughter who's a wonderful student. She's got 3.85 GPA. She loves English. She's a gifted writer. And here we were 6 months ago in her junior year in high school. The night before her paper was due, she still didn't have a thesis. And she was devastated, distraught. She was feeling miserable. And
Feeling a
I
failure, I'm
unwound,
sure.
and I unwound the process of how this had happened. And there was just no framework for helping them deal with this
Right.
along the way. And I have a son who's in engineering school. And I had a better chance of working with him earlier on through his research papers. And he's much more deliberate in the process, but I don't think it's because he learned it in high school. I think it's because we were very deliberate in terms of how we went through the process of teaching him how to write a research paper. And we're doing the same thing with my daughter now to try and help her get over the hump on that last research paper experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you think I mean, I don't know. I have a lot of questions about, education, of course, but I mean, I just wonder from your perspective, I guess you think that teachers need to know more about it. So in some ways, I kind of want to ask you, you're a successful financial researcher and you're a parent. Do you think that educational leaders should invest in this process, in knowing this process to train their teachers this way? I mean, would that be something you would advise them to do?
Absolutely.
And why?
And I would advise starting maybe even earlier than I started, maybe starting in 8th grade before they come into high school.
Yeah.
Because for several reasons. One, you have to analyze for a living, no matter what you do in almost any career. You have to be able to write in almost any career path that you do right now. And you have to be able to ask the right questions, and you have to develop skills of asking, of looking, of being reflective, and above all, especially in the environment that we live today, of having an open mind so that you can change your mind, as opposed to walk into society with a lock on, a predisposed lock on what you're going to do or what you think about issues. So getting these kids, I think, started earlier rather than later is critical, because you're just not teaching just how to write a research paper. You're teaching them how to learn.
Right, exactly. And the more experience they have with that process and learning about themselves as a learner within it, and through that process, the better they'll be able to replicate it in their life and in their future, right? I mean, yeah, so if they start younger, they'll be better off. Absolutely.
But I think there's got to be a lot of kids out there like me who weren't very confident about writing, who didn't know that they could be good academically at digging, or that they could excel at something like that, right? So for me, this is without question the most impactful and rewarding thing that happened to me academically. I was so lucky to be just blindly picked out of a group of kids in a high school with 3,000 students to do this. Because it was the day that happened to me, I really think was was like winning a lottery ticket.
Well, we're so glad it happened to you too, Carlos. Well, thank you so much for being with me today and taking the time. And I really appreciate you and hearing all these wonderful impacts that it's had on you and your life. And I'm just so happy.
Well, thank you. And if I can be helpful to you in your process or in your seminars, please let me know.
Thank you. I will, for sure.